welcome everybody to the Norton Planning Board's meeting of Tuesday, April 25th, 2023. Again, this is a hybrid meeting of the planning board. Some members of the public are welcome to participate in person or remotely. In person, tonight we are at the Norton Media Center at 184 West Main Street. To join online via video, if you've not already, there is a Zoom link available in the meeting agenda, or you can use the Zoom app with meeting ID 638-929-1060. There is also a dial-in number should you choose to join directly by phone. Meeting will also be available on Norton Cable Access, channel 15. In the event for future sessions you're not able to attend in person and would still like comments part of the discussion, you can please feel free to email them to Brian Carmichael, town staff, and they can be forwarded to the board ahead of the meeting and read into the record as appropriate. So, with that out of the way, I'll get going on our agenda today. In terms of planning board business and policies, we do have a couple of things just to run through here. The town election is this weekend, and 3 seats on the board are up for election, so everybody, get out and vote. Our next meeting after the election is scheduled for May the 9th, I believe. So that is Tuesday, May 9th. I know we had discussed this prior, but I would not be able to be present at that meeting. Just to confirm, Alan, I think you would be next up to run the meeting on the 9th. Are you?
I'm looking.
Okay. I think we mentioned it like a month back and then we had.
I think it should be good.
Okay. Given the fact that we may have new members joining, I don't know if it makes sense, if we want to plan to hold board position nominations on the 9th, or we prefer to do that at our next meeting in May. Obviously, I would not be here to accept anything, so.
I think we would wait.
We should have the full board.
Yeah.
And Brian, we have that scheduled for the 23rd, correct? May the 23rd is the
Meeting after?
I think.
Looks like it, yeah.
Okay. So, just so we know, and that'll be on the agenda on the 23rd. And move forward from there. I don't think we have any bills and warrants to discuss at this time, and we don't have any minutes to approve at this meeting either. Is there anything else anybody wanted to raise in terms of planning board business and policies at this point? Or move on to the meat of the agenda? Okay. The first item up, we have 2 A&R endorsements. The first one's more straightforward. So that is 16 Guy Street. So I'll ask if there's somebody here in person or joining us virtually who wants to just give us an overview of that project. If you'd like, I think I would suggest going over close to the big screen there, so if you need to, you can point to it, and that'll give the camera person the way to get your good side. You can tell him which side is your good side.
Roy Delano from Lighthouse Land Surveying, 27 Jefferson Street in Taunton. I'm here representing Ellen DeVincent, Mary Ellen DeVincent, and she's owned this parcel for 25 or 30 years, and she wants to move in with her daughter, so we want to separate house number 16 from the remaining land. So we've got a 50-foot frontage on Guy Street, and we've got lot 3 more than satisfies the area requirements for a large lot. We have lot 2, which has frontage on North Worcester Street, and that has 69 feet of frontage, and so that's another large lot, and that has more than the required square footage and acreage for a large lot. And then we have lot 1, which is a traditional lot having 174 feet of frontage and 48,000 square feet. So that's what we're intending to do, is divide the property into 3 parcels.
Yeah, and even though lot 2 kind of has a funky shape, I think Maria, you called it a retreat lot, is the shape you called it. It does meet the shape factor and everything else for,
Yes.
okay. Any members of the board have any questions about this A&R?
Just one. In looking at the, I'm happy to share if you need me to, at looking at the aerial, Guy Street doesn't seem to go all the way to the property line. It ends prior to it, and maybe the lot line just isn't drawn correctly on the GIS map?
No, you are correct. There is a driveway that comes off the end of Guy Street. But the building permit, I went to the building department, and back in 1993, was it, Mary Ellen?
93 or 92.
They granted the permit for her house
Okay,
using Guy Street, and, you know, they signed off on the construction of a driveway off the end of Guy Street.
okay, so are we considering,
It still has the 50 feet legal frontage on Guy Street.
okay,
Yeah, I know, Ray, you met with the building commissioner and town staff, and it was kind of a bit out of the ordinary, but you kind of agreed that
it was okay because it would be maybe a little different if there was nothing in here. It was a brand new lot, but there's already homes in there, so they have the adequate frontage. It was granted years ago.
okay. So that's considered frontage on Guy?
Yes.
Okay.
Do we have any other additional questions on this A&R? Otherwise, I look for a motion to endorse.
A motion to approve A&R 18930.
Seconded.
Okay, thank you, Alan and Laura. Is there any further discussion on the motion? Okay. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Abstentions? Okay. So,
Okay, so I have the Mylar and
The
2
Mylar?
paper
Yep, you can
copies.
just leave it with me. And I'll email you guys tomorrow.
Yeah,
Okay.
you wanna leave them here, we'll
Leave-
sign it.
leave
and
it right
he'll
here?
s-
Yeah, you can give it to Brian.
Yeah,
Okay.
leave it here, we'll sign it, and then we'll scan it into the record, and then let you know when we pick up the originals and,
All right. Thank you very much.
thank you. Okay. Next item on our agenda is 301 South Worcester Street, which is both an A&R and listed as item number 3 under our, item number E. Wow, I guess I need some more caffeine. Under our public hearing section. So, understanding that the discussion may kind of cross both agenda points, I do wanna open the public hearing for SP 185-84, as well as starting the discussion on the A&R 188-49. So for 301 South Worcester Street, is there an applicant or a representative to speak in person or here joining us virtually?
Hello, Nick Fasandola from the Level Design Group, here on behalf of the property owner and applicant.
Hear you loud and clear.
Very good. So, through the chair, what would you like me to start off with? The common driveway special permit, or kind of get into the A&R?
Why don't we just do it? Why don't we do an overall project narrative, and then we can go into what you're looking for the A&R, and then going into any details we need on the special permit. How does that sound?
All right, sounds like a plan. So we have a existing parcel of land, address is 301 South Washington Street. It's approximately a existing 29 acre parcel.
South Worcester Street, just to
Yes.
correct you there real quick.
Correct, yes, South Worcester, sorry, Worcester Street, yes.
Other end of town, no worries.
And so this view here just shows the overall A&R parcel, that's like the new lots that are gonna be created, and with the remainder lot. So I don't know if you guys have the site plan I submitted, it has the,
Yeah, we did have it up on
Would
the
it help?
screen there, yeah.
would it be helpful if I could share my screen, or can you guys see that?
You should have the ability to, yes.
Okay, yeah, so that'd probably be easier for the presentation purposes, so I will share this screen. All right, so this is the site plan set for the special permit application for the common driveway. So this is the existing parcel here. You have South Worcester Street, John Scott Boulevard, and Dean Street. And then you have the Goose Branch Brook River, which bound the existing 29-acre parcel. What we're proposing here this evening is to, down here, subdivide the lot, the property into essentially 5 separate new lots, with one of those lots being the remaining land area from the proposed A&R lots here, which would be new lots for single-family residence construction. So we have 4 proposed lots, and they're numbered oddly due to a previous subdivision. So this one's, the remainder is labeled Lot 1. There was a previous subdivision which divided off a parcel of land in this area here, which is technically recorded as Lot 2. So we started on new lots as Lot 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7, with Lot 1 remaining as the is going to be the remainder of the current parcel area. So Lot 3 is a fully conforming A&R lot. We have frontage on Dean Street. We satisfy the lot area requirements, the lot shape factor requirements. And then we have lots 4, 5, 6, and 7, which all will front on John Scott Boulevard, though all those lots contain all the required frontage and lot area requirements. And for these 4 lots, we're proposing a common driveway off of John Scott Boulevard, with the common section highlighted here in gray, and the non-highlighted areas would be private driveway sections. So this would be what would be identified as the common driveway, which would be maintained by a homeowners association of those 4 parcels for snow plowing, maintenance, and other types of maintenance activities. The reason we're requesting the special permit for the common driveway is there's a significant amount of wetlands on this parcel. There's a large pond located over here towards the on the east side of the parcel. We have wetlands through here. There's a small existing crossing where we're proposing a new box culvert where the driveway will be crossing a small area of wetland. So there's an existing small piped culvert which services a previously constructed old farm cart path. So we're maintaining that crossing, but we're going to be improving it and installing a culvert that complies with stream crossing standards. We currently have a application in front of the Conservation Commission. We're working through the process for the entire development with them. There's a lot of permitting on the conservation side, as we do have a lot of wetlands on the site. We are within the riverfront area of the Goose Branch River, which is highlighted here in blue. And we're currently working through that process with them. But as far as the common driveway goes, it's relatively straightforward. We comply with all the requirements for a common driveway detailed in zoning bylaw section 175 2.2, which is essentially where the definition of common driveway is found, but also contains all the requirements, mainly most importantly, it's less than 500 feet long from John Scott Boulevard and at Farmers Point. And it will be completely within the boundaries of the existing parcels here. The driveway is proposed to be 18 feet wide through the common section, and then it will reduce down to 12 feet wide for this private section right here. So everywhere else will maintain a minimum, excuse me, it's going to be 20 feet wide in that area.
Have you done turning calcs with a fire truck apparatus going up on the left-hand side there?
Yeah, no, a fire truck can make this sweep up through here. It would need to back down the driveway, just like it would have to back down any typical residential driveway. There's no hammerhead or cul-de-sac style turnaround. So a fire truck would have the ability to come up, turn in, come up here, service any type of emergency or fire, and then it would back down and then leave the property through the common driveway.
And I guess this may be getting ahead of ourselves here, but you mentioned you're with conservation and we're replacing, and you're going over, talking about a culvert and different things. Obviously, if we're looking at the common driveway as a special permit, do you anticipate potential changes in the design of the common driveway from your discussions with conservation, which would put us in a position where we want to wait till you're done with that before we approve anything, rather than having to have you go through a modification later?
We don't anticipate any modifications to the geometry of the common driveway in its layout. We are working with conservation, and we have designed a fully compliant stormwater management system for the development as a whole and for the common driveway as required by DEP. So we do have some stormwater fire retention basins located here, here, and in this area. There will be some minor modifications to the stormwater infrastructure that is proposed based on review comments by the Conservation Commission's selected consultant. But we don't anticipate any modification to the actual driveway. But I do understand the board's position or concern, considering that there is an open permit which could modify the plan in the future. So if it's the will of the board to hold off on an approval until we have our second meeting with the Conservation Commission and dial this in a little bit further, we have no problem with that. We should be on the upcoming Conservation Commission meeting. They just had one last night, which we were continued on as we were still working on comment responses and updating the plan. Most of the comments were relative to some minor stormwater management items, additional detail for the three-sided box culvert that we're going to be installing, just providing some additional details. So like I said, I don't see any major changes to the driveway, but I do understand if you guys would like to hold off on issuing an approval this evening.
I'm viewing it as your decision rather than ours. Because if you need to modify it after we issue a decision, it's more work for you.
No, I
and it's more
understand, yeah.
agendas and more potential noticing and all of that fun stuff. So,
No, I think it would make sense to continue and address any questions that the board may have, any other board members may have, and then continue to the next meeting once we move forward along with conservation. I think we'll be in a better position to know if we'll have to make any other minor modifications to this layout.
but that should affect only the driveway special permit. The A&R lot lines, you don't anticipate any changes to those whatsoever.
That is correct. No, the lot lines, will be as shown on this plan. We don't anticipate any changes to those property lines.
Okay. Now that I've dominated the floor for 5 minutes, I'll take a step back here. Any members of the board have any additional questions for the applicant? As it relates to this project, we're kind of taking both agenda items simultaneously here because it's one project.
I would like the fire department to sign off, at least take a look at it.
Okay. Can we make sure that the fire department has seen the layout for the common driveway?
Yes.
Yeah. Obviously, I understand that, I know they couldn't turn around in my driveway either, they'd have to back out, but, I agree with you, it's always nice to have their,
It's going-
yes, we've seen it, we understand it,
It's going to 4 houses, you know, so it's not like it's
yeah.
one structure. so.
Yeah. It's wider for the other 3, but that one on the left's pretty skinny. But yeah. Okay. Laura, did you have anything that you wanted to ask?
I do. Mr. Fasendola, can you confirm what the frontage is on lot 5, please?
On lot 5, yeah, sure. Let's see. Go to this plan here. We have 150 feet for
Okay.
lots 5 and 6. Lot 4 has 166.47, and lot 7 has 156.79.
Okay, thank you. And to confirm, lot 5 is the lot that will have the beginning of the driveway, correct?
Correct, yes, the one with all the language here, all the dimensions for the easement that will be on that parcel, but that is correct. So lot 5 is the lot which will bear most of the burden of the common driveway.
Okay, thank you. So I have a conundrum, I
Sure.
guess. If this was being presented solely as an A&R, and I didn't know about the common driveway, I'd feel fine about the approval of it. The problem is that in the definition of a common driveway, it says in no case shall a common driveway be considered frontage by our bylaws. So I can approve the A&R, but then we've created a non-conforming lot for the special permit.
What's well,
So the
What
frontage
is
is
the-
150, the requirement is 150.
okay, I understand what you're saying. So the language in the bylaw specifies that the common driveway isn't frontage to prevent you from having a common driveway go to a lot that has no frontage.
Okay. Is that the purpose of it?
That's how I read it.
Okay.
Do you want me to,
I mean, we
I mean-
can waive it for the special permit, but I kind of feel weird about being asked to waive a situation that we just created.
okay. Let me share here. I'm gonna pull up the exact language of what we're talking about. So Nick, I'm sorry, I'm kicking you off the screen here.
Yeah, no problem.
Let me see now which, we have it up on this screen. Let's see. Are we seeing, yes, so common driveway. So a private driveway providing vehicular access for at least 2 but not more than 4 building lots. A common driveway may be allowed by special permit, but in no case shall a common driveway be considered frontage as defined in this bylaw. To me, that is saying that you can't use a common driveway to cheat your way out of frontage requirements for the lot.
Okay.
I understand that the language is, in no case shall a common driveway be considered frontage. I don't think we're considering it frontage. I think the common driveway goes through their frontage.
Okay.
Does anybody else have any? We're getting into a semantic wormhole
Yeah,
hole
kind of,
early in our
yeah.
meeting today.
Hence the conundrum.
Yes. Yeah, that's how I read the purpose of that language. But the in no case is obviously a very strong statement.
I am a rule follower.
Yes. So, if, I do see the hand there, so hold on one second. Wait, so,
If you tell me that we have precedent that that's how we're to interpret that, then I'm fine with it. I just wanna
am
make
I
sure.
aware of specific precedent relating to this sentence? No.
Okay.
Do I've stated, that's how I read that sentence.
Yeah.
Because it's talking about the basic definition of a common driveway, as in, you can't use a common driveway to cheat your way out of zoning requirements.
Got it.
If we don't feel like, if we feel like we're creating a non-conforming lot, that's something that, again, we're, as the applicant said, they're potentially looking to continue, so if we wanna ruminate on it for a bit, we can do that. As it sits now, I'm not sure if, I don't think there's not enough extra frontage on that side of the street to change it. Cause they've got 160s and 150s
Yeah.
with a 150 requirement. So there's not a rearrangement that they would be able to do otherwise.
No, not unless they took
Yeah,
it from
It'd be messy,
the remaining.
yeah, but that's but that's cut at the
Yep.
street anyway.
Yep.
So, I don't have any hesitation with it, but,
Yeah, so I think the whole intent of that statement is, common driveways aren't considered to be roadways, where you would actually have a common driveway, one lot on this side, one lot on that side, and almost treat it like a roadway and have it be frontage. So that's how I've seen it interpreted in many other communities. But if that's something you'd like me to run by the zoning enforcement officer and just have him provide an opinion on, if that would make the board more comfortable with the situation, we can definitely reach out to them and request just an interpretation of that sentence and how they're interpreting it. But typically, that type of language is for that purpose, where sometimes common driveways may look like roadways. They may be 24 feet wide and have curb and essentially look like a roadway, but they're actually not. And I think that's why that statement was included.
okay,
If I may.
yes.
When the application came in, the building commissioner and I discussed it, and he thought that the requirements for frontage were satisfied. Obviously, that is the board's decision, not staff's, but that was his opinion.
Yeah, and looking, I can see they've got no other way of accomplishing what they want to, so even if they ask for a waiver on the special permit, I'd probably give in, so, not looking to fight that. I get it.
Okay. Do we have any additional questions for the applicant about this project? I know I did see one hand in the audience, I'm not sure if we've answered that, but if, I'll ask if they still have comments, if members of the board are satisfied at this point. Did we answer your comments?
Not really, but I'm not like super upset about anything.
Okay. If you'd like to speak, you're welcome to.
I was
ask
just
you-
about the common drive, the idea of it.
Yeah, if
Oh,
you-
okay.
Yeah. Just your name and address for the record.
Steve Warshall, 30 Wampum Road. My understanding of the concept behind a common drive is that if you had like a row of commercial buildings, you could eliminate driveways between them, so you don't have as many entrances and exits. But they would all maintain the frontage along the main roadway. That's all.
Okay. Thank you, Steve. Okay. So, we have, again, this is two different agenda items.
I have a question.
Oh, sure, I
My name is Robert
apologize.
Shaw, 47 John Scott Boulevard. My understanding is that this whole project is being done with the estate of Godfrey and a Scott Goddard, correct?
Those are the names listed on the application, yes.
Okay. My understanding also, Scott Goddard has done business with this woman before she passed. And he took advantage of this woman, and he paid her $1,000 for a lot that's right next to me, which is 49 John Scott Boulevard. All these special permits that he's looking to get, including the ones in the Conservation Committee, he's not entitled to unless he's paying full value for the property. And my understanding is that there's questions about the contract between the mother and Scott. I just got through spending a half an hour with the son. He didn't want to go forward with any of this. And Scott threatened to sue him for $500,000 without giving him a chance to go through his lawyer and all that. So if Scott is not paying full retail, which the one piece of property that was sold, one lot was sold by the mother for $170,000. So that means each one of these properties have to be sold to him for 170 or whatever the fair market value is, for him to get special permits. If he's not paying full value under mass law, he's not entitled to get special permits. Correct me if I'm wrong, because this came from an attorney from who used to be the town moderator for Mansfield.
Thank you, sir.
So, and Scott does a lot in this town, and I know he gets away with a lot in this town. He doesn't live in this area, he lives in Northborough. But he has picked Norton to take all these projects on. He's a wetland specialist. I saw him down at the EPA, DEP, we went down there for a hearing on the one next door. And unfortunately, the town of Norton wouldn't go forward with suing him or stopping him. He knows how to get around things. So either he has to have a purchase and sale contract for the property, showing the value that he's paying for it, or the executor of the estate should be involved in these plans. Because from what I understand, it's supposed to be like a 50-50 split after the fact. The son knew nothing about the mother's plans. Scott, I guarantee you, took advantage of this woman at her old age. So before the town gives out all these special permits, this should be looked at, a very hard look at the way that this has been handled to this point in time.
Thank you, sir. So,
Because legally, Godfrey's son would like to have a chance to find out what's going on truly and what he can and can't do.
thank you, sir. So, I don't know if this board is able to address all of those at this time. Obviously, the applicant cannot be granted permits on land that they do not own. Or they do not have a right to deal with.
So Godfrey owns the
So-
land. Who is this company that did the designs representing?
That is not,
Who hired him?
that is not in our, how somebody acquired land is not something this board would generally handle.
But he hasn't acquired it. That's why he's doing it under the
Sir,
guise of
Sir.
the estate of.
So, through
Sir.
the chair, may I make a statement on behalf of the applicants?
if you would like to make a
It's
statement,
applicant or applicants?
if you would like to make a statement, you can. I am not
Yes.
asking you to, so this is of your own volition here.
Understood. Yeah, I just want to go on the record. We do have a signed authorization from the estate to submit
Well,
for,
you have a signed authorization
Permits.
from the woman that passed.
Sir, Mr. Fassendel is speaking. I'll ask you to refrain from commenting. If you would like to make further comments, they would come through myself, the chair.
Okay,
Thank you.
and we submitted that authorization with the application. So it's all public record, what was submitted, and that's all I know, to be honest. So we did design work, and we're here representing the property owner and the state for this application for a special permit. Anything else, any other backdoor deals, I'm not aware of. Like I said, we're just the engineering company tasked to do the design work, provide a good plan that complies with all the requirements, and make the presentation and work through the permitting process.
So, sir, Mr. Shaw, am I correct? Did I hear your last name
Yes.
correctly?
Yep,
So, as they've stated, the application is public record, if you would like to view it. There should be a digital repository, otherwise it is available at Town Hall. Any special permit that the board issues can be appealed.
can be what? I didn't hear that.
Can be appealed
Okay,
by anybody who has standing. Standing would be, whether somebody has standing would be something for a court to decide. I am not a court, I am not a lawyer. And any kind of additional, I hate to say this is a lawyer issue, but that's where I'm kind of leaning toward.
well, there's also a town issue, because the town is not supposed to be issuing permits to somebody that
From our perspective, they have
is not,
submitted
is not entitled to
documentation.
one.
From our perspective, they have submitted documentation. If there is a dispute as to that documentation, then that would be something for the legal process.
So if you issue the permits to the estate of Mrs. Godfrey, and then Scott takes over from there, that's entitling him to rights he never had, just like he got next door.
And that would be,
By law, by mass law, and that's something that the town has to look at. If he does not have a signed purchase and sale or some sort of agreement showing how much he is paying for the property, because he's not entitled to these special permits unless he is paying full value for the property. And that's something that the planning board and everybody else in town has to look at.
thank you, sir.
That's part of the review process. Okay, it's as much as the driveway being 30 feet wide, as far as what is legal and what is not legal. Correct?
I understand your comments, and I appreciate them, and we will review that. As we've said, I believe previously, we're not looking to approve the special permit in this session. So
Well, I
this-
just wanted to bring up that this was a factor in the whole decision-making that really needs to be looked at to find out if this is truly being handled legally. And it's not from you guys. I understand you guys are going with what's in front of you, and you probably never knew any of this. But that was why I brought it up. He has a history of doing it in this town. And unfortunately, I don't know why he's picked this town to do it. But, he seems to get a lot of things run through this town fairly quickly. And,
Excuse me, through the chair, are we going to continue this conversation with this gentleman just
excuse me, I was
Mr.
speaking.
Mr. Fasendola,
bashing?
Mr. Fasendola,
the
I asked,
applicants?
sir, I asked him to refrain from speaking while you were. I'm going to let him finish his statement, and then we will move on. People are
Thank you.
entitled to have their own opinions about whatever they want to have. I may be a little bit more lenient in letting people talk. That's how I choose to run the meeting. The board can choose to consider all, some, or any portion of what people submit as their comments.
All right, I'm pretty much done anyways. Thank you for hearing me. And, hopefully we can go forward and find out exactly what's going on.
Thank you, Mr. Shaw. Okay. Are there any additional comments related to this project? Mr. Wiggins, I saw your hand first, if you'd like to speak.
Yes, I found this from the Conservation Commission minute meeting minutes from January 27, 2020, and it is that Scott Goddard was responsible for the wetland resources on the land owned by John Quadracci on East Dodger Street, map 36 parcel 2, which has been continued from October 22nd of 2018.
Thank you, Peter. Okay, and sir, I believe you had your hand up as
Yes.
well. I'll ask you to just.
My name is Ken Darling.
And
I
your
live at
address.
50 Dean Street,
Thank you, sir.
and I have probably property that's probably most impacted by this project. 22 years ago, I petitioned the Zoning Board of Appeals for an abatement for leniency to build an addition on my house for my handicapped son. We had a meeting before the zoning board, and Marcia Godfrey, God rest her soul, was at that meeting, and she was very upset that the town was considering giving me a break in building an addition for my son. And she was lamenting the fact that she sold land to the previous owner before me so that he could place his house where it is right now. And in doing so, she told the board that she sold him more land than she intended to. And now, that land was undevelopable, if that's a word. So I'm wondering what's transpired, this is a question to you guys, I'm wondering what's transpired in 22 years to make that land that was undevelopable now presently developable.
Sure.
And I also noticed, I got a copy of the overall project, I think that was the sketch that you had up there. And I don't see any identification of the vernal pond that sits next to my house. There's all kinds of wetland issues there that, in my opinion, have not been addressed on that sketch. I don't know if this is the proper time to bring it up, but it looks like they were trying to throw a fastball by the town by not showing the vernal pool.
So?
It's unbelievable. I'm just
So,
comment and question.
yeah.
And
so-
and when I got the letter, the invitation for the meeting tonight, it said that they were going to build a common driveway for 5 lots. I think that I'm just going to take that as a mistake.
Yeah.
There are 5 lots on the, as
There's
part
5
of the
lots on the
plan,
plan.
but only the driveway only goes
But only
to
the
4.
driveway is going to service the 5. The driveway's only going to service the 4.
And the 5th has
And
a
it's gonna be
separate
off of
driveway
Dean
on
Street.
D.
And that's the driveway that's going to go up next to my property that I was told 22 years ago couldn't be developed.
So,
My question,
yeah.
what's
So-
changed?
So in terms of what's developable and what's not, I would characterize that as a very broad statement and something that could potentially be used for hyperbole in a statement for somebody saying, for whatever reason.
I don't know.
Whether in terms of the vernal pool and all of that stuff, this project is also in front of the Conservation Commission.
Mhm.
So they would be the ones looking at the vernal pools and the culvert and crossing the
Mhm.
whatever
Okay.
streams are there and
I
things like that.
just wanted to bring that to
So,
your attention. It's,
yeah, so
I was told that
we're aware
they
of
couldn't
them.
build there, and now they making
Yeah.
plans to do it.
Yeah. What we have in front of us is 2 pieces of action. So an A&R, or an approval not required, under Mass state law, is essentially dividing up the lot.
Mhm.
The A&R process says nothing about whether the lots conform to zoning. It says nothing about whether they are buildable. It just says you are drawing lines on the map.
Okay.
The special permit is only for the common driveway. Whether those properties are too much wetlands to put a house on, that is the applicant's problem to get through conservation.
Okay.
So,
All right.
yeah,
Thank you.
okay. Okay. Any members of the board have any additional questions at this point relating to 301 South Worcester. Otherwise, as we've stated, I think we were looking to continue the special permit. And the applicant said they don't see any potential changes with the A&R. Excuse me. Do we have any questions about endorsing the A&R and continuing the special permit? Or are there any other comments, questions, or concerns that we have at this time? With the understanding that I think we may ask Maria to consult with town staff relating to some of the comments that were raised.
I motion to approve A&R 18849.
Second.
Okay. We have a motion and a second. I did see a hand come up in the Zoom meeting, so I'll hold on action on that motion just for a second. The name I see raised in the Zoom meeting is Nora Justice. So I just asked. Yep.
Yes, that's correct. Can you hear me okay?
We can hear you fine. If you
Oh,
can just
sorry,
state
this
your.
is kind of one of my first times doing this, so I couldn't figure out how to raise my hand.
You
Nora
did it
Justice, I live
perfectly.
at 309 South Worcester Street.
Okay.
So I'm the abutter on the other side of the pond from this development. And I just wanted to mention that in terms of what Mr. Butler was talking about, that as a neighbor here for almost 30 years in the area, that I have also understand that Mr. Godfrey, David Godfrey, has some significant concerns about this, so I just wanted to support Mr. Butler's comments from earlier tonight. And in terms of Mr. Darling's comments as well, I'd like to support his question about the vernal pool, but also more related to your driveway that you're talking about this evening. Because of where I live for the length of time I've been here, and as close as I've been to the Godfreys and Marcia over the years, I've done a lot of hiking and walking out in the back of their property. And I believe that you folks are not able to see on a plan that there's another vernal pool out very close to where the culvert is for the driveway that you're talking about this evening, for the common driveway area that comes in from South Worcester Street. And I understand it is in front of the Conservation Commission as well, but I just wanted to bring that to your attention too, because I don't see that. I believe that that's a vernal pool. There's a second vernal pool that's out by the, because this is a significant amount of wetlands. The wetlands do change, the level of the overall groundwater changes quite a bit depending on the season, and all the way through where those homes are drawn. There are places where, you know, there's no water, and then there's a foot of water, and it happens in our own backyard here, which borders that pond/stream that's coming down further up from under the property that Mr. Butler was talking about earlier beside him. So I just wanted to share that. I don't know if that's something that anybody is aware of, but because it's going through the Conservation Commission, I think that's probably the folks that are handling it. But it is the one I'm talking about. The vernal pool is quite close to the driveway and the culvert, I believe. I've been out there and looked at it. And so that's all. I just wanted to share those comments with you folks.
Thank you, yeah. The Conservation Commission would be in charge of marking the vernal pools and delineating any boundaries from them. And the boundaries that they set, the applicant has to work with. And the end result is the plans that we see. So that's part of the reason, I think, why we're holding off on approving the special permit, just to make sure that the Conservation Commission doesn't say, shift everything this way, shift everything that way, or you go back to the drawing board because we found this other thing that we need to evaluate. But thank you for your thoughts and comments, and I definitely know the varying wetland and terrain around John Scott Boulevard firsthand, so. Okay. So, did we have any additional comments or questions at this time? Okay. So we did have a motion and a second to endorse the A and R. Any other comments on that motion? Okay. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. All opposed? Abstentions? Sorry?
Sorry, nay.
Nay from Eric, okay. And we were looking to continue the special permit to our next session. Mr. Fasandola, given your discussion with conservation, our next meetings are May the 9th and then May the 23rd. And just as a note, I do know on May the 9th, the board will be down at least one member. One voting member.
Okay, let's continue to the 23rd if it's allowable by the board. And just for the record, follow-up items for us would be coordinate with the fire department. And would you like us to touch base with the building inspector on the frontage issue, or is that all set based on Maria's conversation with the building official?
Maria, I think that you felt that you and the building commissioner felt it was, from a frontage perspective, it was fine.
Yes, but if you'd like me to get something in writing from him, I can request him to do that, if you would like it for the record.
I'm gonna create more work for him.
It can be an email.
Sure.
Okay.
That'd be great, thank you.
Okay, I'll have him put it in writing.
Okay. So, we would be looking to continue to May the 23rd. Any further discussion? And then I'd be looking for a motion.
Motion to continue SP 18584 to May 23rd.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? Okay. On the motion to continue, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Okay. We are continued to May the 23rd. Thank you, everybody, for your comments.
Thank you.
Okay. Next item on our agenda is a continuation of a lot of continuations for 280 South Washington Street. The applicant is seeking another continuance as the legal et cetera process plays out. Have they provided any kind of window on when this is gonna end?
I haven't been given a window.
Okay. Just trying to save us on printer ink to continue to write all of these continuances. Again, this is a matter that's been going back and forth between the applicant's counsel and the town council for a very long time. Any objections or questions on the motion, on potential continue?
Motion to continue SP 12737 to May 23rd.
Second.
Okay. We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Abstentions? Okay. We are continued to the 23rd. The next item on our agenda is a continuation of SP 17942 for 43 Charlotte Avenue. This is an application to convert an in-law into a duplex. We talked about this initially in February, and we continued it at our last session. I do see somebody getting ready here potentially. I'm sorry, you were shifting?
Yes.
Cool.
That's me.
Sorry, I apologize.
Wrong person.
Sorry. If you'd like to just come forward and give us an update. I know you had some additional discussions about the
Yep.
project.
We already submitted all the paper to Nick Iafrades, and we're good to go. Finally,
Perfect.
it's just been a year.
And it's still only April.
I'm still not done.
Yes. Okay. Again, the question here was related to the costs and making sure that because this is in a flood zone, we weren't gonna run into FEMA problems with the cost of the rebuild. And again, we're converting essentially an in-law apartment into a duplex under the special permit. I know it's been a little while since we looked at it the first time.
They
Is
asked
any-
about coming out for an assessment, it's like, we're not ready yet.
Do we have any additional questions at this time? Do we want to look at the, Brian, you have, yeah. So the lot plan is here, and we are at 43 Charlotte, so we're. And in terms.
That is all taken care of, it's just a matter of the conversion, of which you realize way back when, the property card said two-family.
Do we have any additional questions? For Ms. Bono? Apologize if I mispronounced your name.
It's what?
Bono?
Yes.
Okay. Otherwise, we'd be looking for action on the special permit application.
A motion to approve SP 17942.
Seconded.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? Or questions, comments? Okay. Hearing none. All in favor of approving SP 17942? Please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Abstentions? Okay. So we've approved, we'll issue the decision, and we'll get that over to you and can continue onward.
Good. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Good luck.
Another month and a half. Good night.
Okay. Next item on our agenda is continuation of site plan review for 233 West Main Street. This is with Level Design Group. This is the application to construct a 4-family residential property over a pre-existing 3-family residential property. This is continued from our previous session. Just as a reminder, this is at the old fruit stand property on West Main Street. And do we have somebody here to speak to any updates here that we have?
We have returning Nick.
I
Good
thought-
evening again, for the record, Nick Fasendola, Level Design Group, here on behalf of the applicant on this continuance. Dan Campbell apologizes that he's unable to attend the hearing this evening as a prior commitment. From what I understand, major outstanding issue or item was the lack of a landscape plan for the site plan approval application. As you can see here, we've submitted the landscape plan, which is shown on the screen. We've been in correspondence with Maria with regards to the design of the landscape plan. This landscape plan is requesting a waiver from the required amount of shrubs based on the zoning bylaw calculation for the required a number of shrubs based on the property frontage. As you can see, we have a significant amount of frontage on both on Oak Street and West Main Street. The calculation for the required shrubs is in the bottom right-hand corner. I believe it's 83 required shrubs, and we're providing a total of 40 shrubs. This is mostly because we're trying to keep line of sight and visibility at the intersection safe for vehicles turning on to West Main Street. We understand that there's been a historic concern with the fruit stand there, limiting visibility at that intersection. The last thing we want to do is keep that problem going by planting new trees within the buffer strip zone. So we're requesting to pull back some of the landscaping along West Main Street and provide less than required number of shrubs. We're also looking to provide less shrubs along the street side with the bioretention basin. If you scroll up the plan a little bit north, there you go. Along Oak Street, you can see we have that large stormwater bioretention basin right there. And that will be a vegetated area. It's gonna have daylilies and other small plantings inside the bioretention basin, so it's not gonna be completely void of vegetation and look like a standard detention basin. It's gonna be a planted area that will also serve as a stormwater management feature for the property, but we cannot install shrubs in that area. Given that we are trying to limit the disturbance footprint for the entire development, you can see on the landscape plan we're maintaining a wooded buffer to the left of we'll call it the north of the septic system area and to the north of the existing building. So we're trying to maintain as much existing vegetation on the property as well as provide required plantings per the bylaw.
Yeah, and I know that previously, I believe Mr. Campbell described the reason for the layout as it is because to the upper end of the site, as it sits on the site plan, is the old septic system, and that is essentially being viewed from a don't touch it lens in terms of digging, etc.
That is correct. The previous septic system is going to be abandoned in place in accordance with Title V requirements.
And I think we discussed this last time, but right now, this is just in front of us. This is not in front of the zoning board, who does also need to grant a variance in terms of increasing the nonconformity, I believe, correct?
I believe we have an open application with the zoning board. Correct me if I'm wrong, Maria?
That is correct.
But to a point, if we approve this and the zoning board says no, then, just like I said earlier, you're gonna be back with us again.
Oh, 100%, that is correct, yeah. Yes, so the extension of the nonconformity is the additional units and the building footprint size.
But in this case, the decision is to proceed as is, and you do not want us to hold up and wait for zoning, correct?
I believe the zoning board would prefer the planning board to act and close out the site plan review portion prior to them making their final decision on the requested permits in front of their board.
There is always a discussion about which board should act first. And it frequently turns into analysis by paralysis by analysis from all boards. And I assume this happens in every single town and is not unique to Norton.
No, it happens everywhere. So.
Okay. So we have the landscape plan. We have the request for the waiver from the landscaping requirements. And outside of the actual waiver itself, thank you for the specific documentation and narrative around the waiver on the plan. It is always helpful to have those explanations right where they are needed. So, obviously we saw this 2 weeks ago, which feels longer than that ago for some reason in my head. Do we have any additional questions for the applicant at this time? Again, this is a site plan review. So if we have conditions that we would like to see in place related to the site plan, we can state those.
Do we have to approve the waiver waiver separately?
We could do a separate motion for the waiver, if you would like. That would be incorporated into the site plan review decision.
So it could just be a single motion with a granting of the waiver?
Yes.
Okay.
And just to confirm, Mr. Fussendola, are there any additional waivers that were discussed at the last session, or is that the only waiver?
I don't believe there were any additional requested waivers for the site plan approval.
Thank you. I apologize, I know you're somewhat pinch hitting here. Okay. Do we have any additional questions or comments from the board? At this point, I will ramble for 15 or 20 seconds and see if anybody who's joining us virtually or in person has any additional comments that they would like to make at this time. Okay.
Would you like a motion to close the public hearing?
Yes.
So moved.
Seconded.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to close the public hearing. Again, after we close the public hearing, we can't ask the applicant any more questions and get any answers. So is there any further discussion on the motion to close the public hearing? Okay. All in favor of the motion to close the public hearing, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Abstentions? Okay.
Motion to approve site plan review number 18654 and approve the requested waivers on the site.
What number are you looking at?
18938. And then she has the right number, 18645.
Do we have it mismarked on the agenda?
I believe so.
Okay. I was going on the agenda, not on.
Sorry.
That's okay. But the site plan review for 233 West Main Street,
Yep.
okay?
Which is number 18654. I forget where I left off. Waiver of the, granting a approval of the waiver request on the landscaping plans.
Okay. We have a-
Seconded.
We have a motion, and Eric has a second. Is there any further discussion on the motion to approve the site plan review with the waiver and standard conditions? Okay. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Abstentions? Okay. So we'll issue this decision, and Mr. Fasendola, you can take this plan to the zoning board and see how they feel.
Thank you very much, we appreciate it.
Okay. Next item on our agenda is a preliminary subdivision plan for Reservoir Estates for 0 Reservoir Street. I see people getting up here.
I have a presentation board. It's in color, a little easier to read than what we submitted.
Sure, if you
I don't know
want
if it's, if you
to
guys want to.
pop it up over there
Yeah, I
and we can get it set up. So again, this is 0 Reservoir Street. It's a preliminary subdivision plan. And I'll let the applicant get set up here. And, let's see, I don't believe, were you the one who presented this property a year ago or no?
Yeah.
Okay.
And I can introduce myself if that's helpful. My name is Edward Corcoran. I'm a lawyer with address at 26 High Street in Milton, engaged to represent the applicant in this case. I do understand it's the second time that this property has been before this board with, I think, a substantially new plan that is designed to get at, I guess, a phase 1, which would be the development of 28 acres of property that fronts on Reservoir Street with 16 lots, 15 of which would be buildable, 1 not buildable. I know there was a comment from Maria that perhaps they should be, 1 and 2 should be combined, but essentially, as Cam will show, there's a portion of the lot that's severed really by a wetland. It would be difficult to make it buildable in any event. We understand that if we're approved, that there would be a requirement for 2 affordable units, and accommodation is being made with that, with respect to that within the plan. Essentially, the plan as submitted is fully compliant, we believe, with both your zoning and your subdivision vision requirements. With one exception, at the discretion of the board, we would like to request that we have permission to narrow the width of the paved way within the 50-foot right-of-way. I know many towns are going to narrower roadways where appropriate in order to reduce the amount of impervious surface and to lower speeds within subdivision type of developments. And with that, I thank you for the opportunity to be here and turn it over to Cam Cameron.
Cam Campbell with DeSalle Brexala, one of the civil engineers for the site. So the site, as Ned described, it's a 28-acre vacant piece of land. It has some walking trails on it and some old signs of some development at some point. There's a fireplace somewhere out in the site. And it's all wooded with a couple of bordering vegetated wetlands in the east, west, and then along the Norton Reservoir. We have, I believe, 300 feet along the Norton Reservoir, and it's 59808 along Reservoir Street frontage. The site is relatively flat on the front portion, and then it has this little high point with a couple of ledge outcroppings, and then it drops back down to the reservoir. It's got a stone wall on either side and single-family residence around it. The site also has a small portion in floodplain district along the reservoir, and then also in the wetland protection district. And then the whole site is in the water resource protection district. So what our client's looking to do is subdivide the lot into 16 new lots, 15 buildable, 1 non-buildable. Lot 1 would be the non-buildable lot right along Reservoir Street. It's 29,000 square feet. It would be cut off. You could combine it with Lot 2. It's cut off essentially by the wetland here. You can't really do much if it was part of it. And we also have a drainage rain garden proposed here. And part of this development is they have to bring in 1,300 feet of sewer along Reservoir Street because there's no sewer currently at the frontage of this property. We've been in front of Norton Water and Sewer. They approved contingent on their peer review.
So just to confirm, so you would be paying to bring sewer to this site?
Yes.
And would sewer be going past to other properties?
It would be.
So the Water and Sewer Commission would be, this is something where they would be looking to hook up any houses?
Yeah, since it's a private developer bringing up the sewer, it's a 7-year leeway, and they really don't have to hook up until they sell, or if their Title V, if their septic system fails, then they would be forced to hook up.
Okay. And where is, just to understand this, because obviously we had these discussions a year ago, so you're bringing in 1,300 feet of sewer.
It's between Elm Street.
So where is it right now?
It's between Elm Street and Acre Road. It's
Okay.
1,300 feet this direction.
Going in that direction.
If you go that way, it's to 140.
Yes. Yeah. So we are talking about, I'm just pulling this up on the map here, so I apologize. So we are coming from, it's coming from Elm and where?
And between Elm and Acre.
Elm and Acre, okay, so right here. And then you would be coming, okay, so just that little stretch there.
Yeah, a lot of it's undeveloped on the reservoir side. And there's, I don't know exactly how many lots there are, but there's not a signal. There's probably 7, 8, I believe. There's not, because they're larger lots in the area.
I'll call it a dozen-ish, depending on where the lot lines are and where it's starting, because it's more dense at the acre end, so where
Yeah.
you are between elm and acre could make a difference of 3 or 4 houses.
Yeah, and part of that construction, they'll have to stub out to every frontage, so provide a stub at every frontage of the property.
Right. Okay. Keep
So
going.
The other 15 lots are all meet zoning. They're all 60,000 square feet or larger of upland area. 2 of the lots, Lot 2 and Lot 16, are over 80,000 square feet, so they can have duplexes on them. The current plan shows a conceptual single family. As they are now, they're around 2,100 square foot footprints as the current plan with the driveway.
But they would be as of right duplexes?
As of right duplexes in Lot 2 and Lot 16.
Okay.
So here's kind of a zoomed in on the front portion of the roadway. We're showing 26 feet of pavement. We would like to shrink it down to 24. It's 26 feet for 15 houses is a little large, and given the wetlands and the reservoir, if you take away a foot on either side of the road, you lose about 5,200 square feet of pavement, which is pretty significant. And then the 24-foot would also reduce the speeds through the development. And we have a department head meeting with Maria and Board of Health, Water and Sewer, Fire Department, and Conservation. And Fire Department had no real issue going down to 24 as long as their truck can make it, which it can. And we can, in the definitive process, we can do a turn analysis showing it can.
Yeah, I know they'll give you the biggest vehicle they've got. And you can
Yeah, it's the ladder truck, we have that now.
Yeah.
And the fire department's approved the hydrant locations already that we proposed throughout the site. On either side of the road, there's a 3-foot landscape strip with a 5-foot walkway, and then about a 3-foot strip before the right-of-way, the right-of-way is 50 feet wide per subdivision regulations and zoning. These lots double front, so they can be swapped. The road loops through the site, so they have the required frontage on both sides. So if a developer came in and wanted to put the lot over there, the house over there, it can be done. Right now, we offset them to give people privacy. And if you go and look in the dark green, that's kind of your limit of disturbance, and then the light green is your existing woods that will stay.
The lot sizes of those middle lots, how many square feet are those roughly?
60,000 or more.
60. Are they more than 120?
They are not.
Okay, so there wouldn't be.
You couldn't put 2 houses, but they have the option to put this house over here. If they would like.
Just dealt with 2 A&Rs earlier.
Yeah, no, it's fine. Zoom. Get up towards the reservoir. It just loops back around. This is the lot under common ownership. It would be providing frontage for this lot. The roadway would be. It meets the property line and then comes back off. Similar area of disturbance, area of non-disturbance. The red lines, this is your 100-foot buffer. That's your 25-foot for the wetland. The blue is your wetland protection overlay, and the dark dashed is your floodplain.
So you are within the 100-foot buffer?
Yes, for a couple of the lots. And Conservation's aware of it, and we would, the permitting for this is a little, you can do the road separate through Conservation, and then when the lots get built, you do each lot separately. Because a lot of these lots don't have wetlands, so a lot of them wouldn't need an NOI.
But the road does not cross into any of those
The road crosses the 100-foot on the front. Right here, it's in black on this So the road crosses here and then up in the corner, I believe. No, no, so it's just in that small section over there.
Okay.
There's a zoomed out version of it. And the blue areas are proposed detention ponds and also a rain garden in the front corner. We have the grading kind of, the road follows the natural grading of the site, and then you build a little pads out for every house.
Okay.
There is a retaining wall along here to allow for the detention pond, and then along this portion here to prevent from going into the 25-foot buffer.
And the plan is for all of the retention basins and retaining walls and things would be covered under a homeowners association?
So we'd be looking to get the road accepted by the town.
Okay.
If it's not, then yes, it would all be homeowners association.
I mean, it would have to be a homeowners association until the town
Until the town accepts it, yeah.
chose to accept it or not.
Yes. And there'd be easements for the retention ponds, because they are on lots. It still hasn't, I mean, it's gonna be peer reviewed and stuff, so you don't
Yeah.
put the easement until you get the final size and shape of the detention pond.
Right. Having that detention area on the lot that isn't buildable and isn't owned by anyone is a potential
Yes, it is.
thing that I don't like as much.
Yeah,
Because who maintains it?
yeah,
If it's, especially if you're looking to get this accepted by the town and not have a homeowners association who is in charge of maintaining that area.
yeah.
So having it on its own lot is a potential, something that I would consider revising potentially.
Yeah, we can,
That,
we
that's
can
not
make that
something
an
we need to
easement, you can make it an
finalize
easement
now,
at some point.
but.
There's talk about if, further down the line, if this gets developed, the sewer pump station that all the sewer goes to will have to be upsized. And there's potential for us to put our own pump station on this site, which can be conveyed to the town at some point if they want to use it. So that it's kind of why we lean towards leaving it as a separate lot at the moment.
Okay. So that's something that can be discussed at a later point.
Yes.
My perspective is one, clear ownership and responsibilities of anything that is maintaining drainage and stormwater on the site.
Yep.
Especially given its proximity to all of the reservoir and all of the other floodway zones, et cetera.
Yep. So here you have a broad view of the utilities. It would be an 8-inch water line looped through the site, tapped in both ends, with a stub going out to this property. And then you have gas and underground electric and communications. And then all of these lots would have to be force sewered. So they'd have their own little mini, they're called E1s, they're little pump stations. And the line in the street would be a force main where it hits and then it would tie into the new manhole here where it's gravity on Reservoir Street.
Okay.
And that is,
I know that site is, we'll just say not suitable for septic.
it is not. I've done about 5 or 6 test bits on this portion and about, I think, 5 or 6 here. And the groundwater is roughly 2 feet and the soils are tight, so it will not perk. Well, you can probably get maybe 1 or 2 perks somewhere, but not enough to do septics for each of these houses.
Okay.
And that's why they're looking to bring the sewer up the road.
And I guess you've mentioned this a couple of times, this is a potential phase 1. Phase 2 would potentially be that upper portion of the lot that's closest to the reservoir that we're not talking about right now?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, either phase 2 could be that, and they also own here. So, it's which one comes first, or if any at all, is still in discussion.
Separate zoning districts. So
Yeah, this is all
really-
R60, these are village commercial.
Yeah, I know there was, yes.
Yeah, originally we came with the dead-end road with, I believe it was 35 units, and you guys believed it was too dense. And so we stepped back and are just applying for this right now.
Okay. Yeah, and I know we did have a couple of members of the board who weren't there at that point. Brian, I'm just gonna share real quick.
Let me stop sharing.
Just for a point of reference here, the previous plan that we viewed as a subdivision is coming up on the screen here. The previous plan, the front section looks fairly similar, and I can't see. And then the back section here, what was proposed, which is not proposed in this plan, so I'm just providing as a reference, was a lot of multifamily here with a cul-de-sac at the end. So that's not proposed in front of us today, but just from a, this is where the applicant started, and this is what they're presenting to us today. So I'll stop sharing there. If anyone wants to see those files again, I can make sure. I know we've got them in permanized, because that's where I pulled it from. But if we want to, if we feel it's helpful to have those as a reference with this file, we can note as an old plan. So any members of the board have questions for Jim? I see your hand up already.
Yeah, so with the sewer tie-in, for the residents, you said it was 7 years if their septic failed. What's the cost for them to tie in? What would the cost of a septic replacement be? And how much does it add to the value of their home?
I'm not a contractor, so I'm not great with costs. I know your typical everyday septic is around 20 grand now. The tie-in, I'm not 100% sure, because there's a fee through the town also to tie in. I'm not sure.
That's kind of tough.
Some properties would have to be probably pumped as well to get to the sewer on Reservoir as we are.
Yeah.
Because they're set pretty far back and they may be lower than Reservoir Street.
I think the previous plan, you had the sewer coming up Reservoir and going over from Reservoir, correct?
So it comes up Reservoir.
The
from-
old plan, I think you had it coming up Reservoir and going in that way, correct? Or am I
From this way?
From the village commercial and coming over. Is that
No,
what
we
you had?
never came through.
Okay, it was always
It was
coming
always
through
supposed to, yeah, it was always coming up. If you
Okay.
have to do it this way, it's coming from the center of Norton, which is much farther away.
Yes. Okay, just making sure. it was-
How many residents in your plan are gonna be tied into this, having to tie into the septic, into the sewer?
I don't have the
Looking
number
at-
directly off the top of my head.
Looking at the lot lines on the aerial map, we're looking at about a dozen, give or take, plus or minus.
Right.
Because it ends between Acre and Elm right now, and there's 6 homes in that.
Near shot right there.
Right, so where it ends,
It's more towards Elm, so it's,
yeah, so
Yeah.
you're probably,
I believe it's
okay,
like the last 2 houses before Elm is where the actual manhole is.
yeah, and it's coming in, yeah, over here. So, you're talking about all of the homes right here.
And that's something that I
Just
can
on Reservoir.
contact the town water department for the tie-in cost?
Yeah, we could get that cost from them, yeah, they would have it.
Expanding
We
on
could
that.
look at what they said, what they talked about at the last town meetings. I know we went over it in detail
Yeah.
and talked about, I think extended the timelines for
Yeah.
tie-ins and all those things.
Expanding on, I said this for the last project, I would support any project that would force residents to tie in and negatively financially burden them at some
Yeah.
point. I could just not support it in good faith, unless there was some type of bond or some type of consideration made between the contractor and the residents that would be affected. It's a big no-go for me.
And they've talked about it. I know Water and Sewer has approved it.
It doesn't matter what they approve it, I'm saying, as far as this permitting goes,
Yeah.
I would
Yeah,
support
I
it.
would want every resident that you have there to say,
Correct.
yeah, I'm on board with this. Because I don't wanna sit there and say, I'm gonna make a decision that says, you have to do this.
And you can't just throw a number of 20,000 for a septic in that area, God knows what it would cost.
Yeah, I know, that's
Septic in
the
that area.
basic septic. I'm not a
That's where my
contractor,
reservations are,
so-
right away.
Yeah.
I wouldn't ask people to have to tie in, I wouldn't
Yeah.
do that.
And, I mean, I'm not sure where this section of roadway is on water and sewer's priorities to do it anyway. From a clarification perspective, that's something that, I mean, if they have this as one of their focus areas for build out
Do
of
you
the
think it was
next,
coming anyway?
kind of,
Right.
yeah. Cause I know they have all those mapped out. They
Right.
talked about it,
And I can't.
they showed
say-
it at our last meeting when we were talking about the life science overlay district, they had all of those highlighted. From where water and sewer was looking to expand
Right.
sewer. So that's something that we could evaluate as part of the process, for sure.
I
And I can
agree.
also say that having a sewer in front of the property will increase the value, so it will help offset. the
Agreed,
cost.
it's just
Yeah.
the initial cost for us, for me, to look at residents and say, you have to, I don't feel comfortable doing that.
Our fees are quite high.
Yeah, I understand. Yeah.
What have been the history of the opportunity for delays to the requirement to tying in?
That, if you, like, my whole question was,
Right.
it said, I wanted to know the cost, because you guys said 7 years, sale of home or septic fail, so I wanted to know
Right.
what a septic tank is gonna cost, would it make sense then, if they can wait, are they gonna recoup the value of the tie-in if they're selling the house and they're gonna recoup it on that end? I'm not gonna put a financial burden on anybody, but just for someone else to get a development.
No,
I can't do that.
understood completely.
Yeah.
I think my question was a little different, is that, is the town lenient in, or whether it's a state rate, and I don't know, whether they allow further delays if the septic system hasn't failed and the property is not for sale, do they allow extensions of that 7-year period? Is that something that is difficult to achieve?
I don't, that's
Is
where all my questions
an
are going.
ongoing discussion. I think that
I think it's pretty strict.
it's pretty strict. At a prior town meeting, I forget if it was the last one or the one before that, the town did approve an extension in general to the tie-in timeline. Um,
5. 10 was proposed by a citizen's petition, and then they compromised and extended it to 7.5. We met them halfway and it passed a town meeting.
So that would be the timeline that an applicant is working with, whether there's a waiver or an extension, that'd have to be a case-by-case basis that water and sewer would deal with. And I don't think that we certainly wouldn't have a commitment from them that these people could get waivers, because they wouldn't know the situation
Right.
7.5 years down the road.
Right.
And based on my knowledge of construction, it would be, if the septic failed, it would be cheaper to tie into the sewer than
That's what I was-
build an
my
entirely
questions
new
were
septic
being-
system. It's a lot less construction, a lot less
You have to-
devastation in the backyard. You,
you have to take
one
it out
trench,
and put a new
one
one in.
trench all the
Yeah.
way to the street and you tie it in.
Mr. Chair, I actually have the cost of sewer
Sure.
tie-in. So they charge a minimum of 3 bedrooms per house, and that's $11,550 for a 3-bedroom and $15,400 for a 4-bedroom house, and so on. It's based on $35 per gallon cost based on Title V calculations. So 110 gallons per bedroom, $35 a gallon, and that's how you get the cost of it. But
That's the fee though, not the actual work, right?
Correct.
no, that is just a tie-in fee,
Yeah, that's
yes.
just the
That's the
fee,
fee.
never
Yeah.
mind all the other.
12 to 15 grand-ish.
To start.
Yeah, yes.
Is the betterment fee alone, not the work involved.
Right.
So that is the,
That's significant.
yeah, it's
Yes,
it's
the-
definitely significant.
Yeah, and the houses that are closest to acre, yeah, I'm looking at the JAS map and they're referred to as cottages and bungalows. I would find it very difficult to believe that the cost of the improvement is going to be recouped in the sale of that house.
Alan, when you talked about a bond issue, is that something that builders can then create,
In theory, yeah, they could
say, hey, we're gonna
price out
pay
every single
everybody
tie-in.
to tie in and we're gonna cover that cost?
Yeah.
See, if we're doing it that way, I would feel comfortable on that end. I wouldn't feel comfortable telling people that have been living there for a very long period of time that they have to do something.
So you're essentially, yeah, to a point, that's a question about whether it's,
With conditions
whether it's
or-
the applicant's burden to bear.
Right,
For,
to tie everyone in. Yeah.
right. So if that's something that they're doing as part of the project, or whether that's something that they don't feel is their responsibility, that's
Is that
we-
something that we could make as a
Um,
condition, or is that something that falls outside of our jurisdiction to do?
I don't know whether we would be able to require it legally.
Okay.
If it was something that they offered in good faith, I'm sure that we can take good faith gestures
And then
as they are.
approve it as such.
Yeah,
Right.
that's a question.
Okay.
Whether we could require it legally, I think that would probably be questionable. So, this is a preliminary subdivision
I would agree with the chair
plan,
on that,
so-
but I would also put forward that we'll do best efforts to attack the problem.
Awesome.
And see how we can, whether we can get there.
Great, thank you.
Yes, Lon?
So I noted on the, Brian, can you share and bring up page 13, focusing on specifically the 2 lots closest to the reservoir at the top? Some of the buildings on the site plan are marked as conceptual and some are marked as proposed. And I couldn't figure out why, but I think I have. Scroll in really tight on the top 2, Brian.
I can just do it on the bottom too here.
Okay.
You mean what's closest to the reservoir line?
Yes, please.
Okay. So we're going. And I don't believe those are the 2 lots that the applicant had mentioned had the potential to be duplexes.
Right, they weren't the.
Those weren't those ones.
No. The 2 at the top closest to the reservoir, please.
All the way up.
It's just when you said
It's a
conceptual
different
and proposed,
page.
okay.
Should be page 13. There you go. So I'm looking at the contour lines. And I am looking at the subdivision control law. And you'll note on that top one, we have an 8 feet difference between the front and the back of the property, which is a significant slope. And our design standards in the Norton subdivision control law says design and construction shall reduce and to the extent reasonably possible, avoid the following. Areas over which vegetation will be disturbed, especially on land within 200 feet of a river, pond, watercourse, or stream, or having a slope of more than 15%. Am I correct in assuming that the conceptual properties do not meet that 15% slope standard?
That would be correct. It's 3 to 1.
Okay. Which is a significant portion of these properties. It's those 4 at the top. It follows all the way down the right-hand side of the property.
You can make that 15%. It would cause it to blow out into the already vegetated areas. So the goal is to keep it as tight as possible and not disturb more land.
Okay. But you do see my concern.
I do. Yeah.
We are in the 100% in the Water Resource Protection District. We are partially in the Wetland Protection District. You're proposing building a house over that specific line. So I initially had concerns with lot 6 specifically, but in looking at the design standards, I've got some concerns about quite a few of these lots based on what I'm seeing. I think I made a comment at the last time you came before us, just because it can be built doesn't mean it should be built. The elevation, the contour in that section is significant, and we have design standards for a reason. And I'm a rule follower, so I have some concerns about quite a number of these properties based on that.
to your point, Laura, are we bringing in, would this require bringing in a lot of fill to this lot?
It would bring in some, yeah. I don't have that number off the top of my head, how much, because it is preliminary.
Yeah. But in terms of a rough contour, is there a particular area of the property where it's getting a lot of fill or not a lot of fill?
The most fill would be here, and you're at about 6 feet.
So 6 feet of fill
Over what?
at the top, so in that area of, I'm gonna call it the areas closest to the reservoir.
To the areas of most concern.
Yes.
And I know all the stormwater for the road and everything will be collected before it hits that, and directed to the front here and treated by, we have 5 water quality treatment tanks proposed and 2 detention ponds and 1 rain garden. So it meets the mass standards for treatment.
Okay.
I don't care.
And obviously, this is the plan that you presented. Was there a discussion about the lot, I apologize for being as vague as possible, the lot with the plan right next to you that's closest to your right elbow there? Nope, down 2, yep, that one. Cutting across from there-ish, and cutting across to the other side of the road, and eliminating those 4
Here,
lots.
bring the road
Or
this
up
way.
top.
Yep.
Or you can go more towards where the spur is for the other lot, but getting away from that 100-foot buffer.
There's discussion, but these lots all meet zoning, and the roadway meets the zoning requirements, and the developer has the right to develop his property. And if you cut it across here, you'll lose 3, maybe 4 lots, and he has to also bring up 1,300 feet of sewer, so he has to offset some cost.
Yeah, and just, those are the areas where you have the greatest slope and the greatest impact on the 100-foot buffer and all of the,
Yeah,
all
we
the water
understand.
things. So,
And that's,
it is, to be blunt, it is not our problem to, if the developer is not able to work with their property.
and that's why we came forward today with a reduced development. I know there was a lot here. We cut that all out and stuck with 15 single-family homes, your typical subdivision road. Not asking for any variances or any special permit regarding units.
But to a point, it's not meeting the subdivision design standards, as Laura
So-
pointed out.
And you know it because you've written conceptual versus proposed.
Well, yeah, we don't have architects for every home. There's no point in designing it unless it's approved beforehand.
I
I don't
understand
see the nomenclature is not the point, I don't think. It's the,
I think they're
I
written that way for a reason.
I will give the benefit of the doubt.
Okay.
After going in way too many semantic wormholes on way too many things, both with the board and with everything else in my life, I am not
Mr. Chair, can I ask 2 questions?
sure.
Did you look into the frontage for lot 8? I know like the lot 8 is facing the site that does not have enough frontage by like 5 feet, but if you turn the house the other way, you would have it.
Yeah, we looked into it. I believe you missed a 4-foot section.
Oh,
There
okay.
it meets it.
Okay.
Yeah.
As long as it's there.
Yeah, it's there.
When it curves, it's,
Yeah,
it
there
gets
was
hard to
a,
measure.
when you added the 2 numbers and it was the 145.98,
Got
there's
it.
a little 4.02 that makes it 150.
Okay, so I'll check that, thank you.
Yep.
My other question was for roadway width, I know fire was maybe okay with 24, the Deputy Robbins came by today to ask again about the status of the road. Obviously, as the wider it is, the better for them, not necessarily, conservation or anything else. My only concern is something I did bring up on the technical review meeting we had, is that the planning board subdivision regs state that you need to have at least 26 feet in order for a road to be adopted public. Anything less than that means that the road will have to be private in perpetuity. And I have it, I have too many things open, but I have it here. Okay, so it's a section 5.3, street width and grade. For pavement width in feet, it is 24 for a minor street, which must remain, you need a covenant that the way should always be private, never presented for acceptance, and that a homeowners association or other mechanism will be created to provide for the maintenance, repair, and liability of the way. Otherwise, if you want it to be adopted by the town, it's 26, and our highway superintendent has said that he would be amenable to it being public if that's the case, but it needs to meet the 26.
And we meet the 26, it was just a question
Yeah.
regarding 24.
And planning board, can waive those requirements, it is your decision, but I just wanted to bring it up. Are you proposing, I know it's just conceptual, are you envisioning any sidewalks or maybe
Yeah,
just one side?
There's one on both sides,
Okay.
5-foot sidewalks.
Okay,
with
perfect.
3-foot grass strips between them before the roadway.
Great, and my last comment, I know you mentioned the possibility of duplexes. I know it's an environmentally sensitive area, but I like housing variety myself. But I do wanna point out that they are a special permit use, so you have to apply with a subdivision and a special permit.
Yeah.
So that's, again, up to the board's discretion, but we do not have duplexes as of right. But at least you do meet the minimum zoning for them.
Yeah, and that's a discussion I have with the client.
Yes.
Okay, so we had a
A misspeak, yeah.
yeah, we both did, yeah. Okay, but you understand the planner's point about the width of the roadway versus
Yeah.
private, public
Yeah.
acceptance, et cetera. So that's a decision that ties into the other decision we had about the homeowners association and everything else.
Yeah, it
So that's
does.
a decision for.
And it's a decision for the client
For
as well.
everything, yeah.
Whether he wants to try and ask for a waiver or if he would like to make a HOA or.
Yeah, okay. Okay, so this is a preliminary subdivision plan, again, for the board. So this is our opportunity, as I think we've been doing, to provide our feedback to the applicant. What we say is not necessarily, what we see is not binding, what we say is not necessarily binding in terms of what the preliminary subdivision does. When it moves to the definitive, that's when we get into all of the noticing and final plans and everything like that. So we could, and Ray, correct me if I'm wrong, we could choose to not approve the preliminary subdivision plan, the applicant can still move forward with the definitive regardless.
Yes, I can.
So, is an opportunity for us to give feedback before we move into the definitive stage.
I'd like to just mention something, just as far as feedback goes. I think the signage here will be really important. You mentioned, as far as becoming a public road, whether it does or not, ultimately, I know that a lot of people use Elm Street as a cut through, and that right-hand turn from Elm Street to Reservoir is dangerous, just given the amount of lack of visibility with that right-hand turn. One of the reasons why it's usually not a problem is that there's not a lot of traffic coming from that, and obviously this would add all of that traffic. So I think because of that, things would need to just be slowed down significantly, because that could be a hazardous spot as far as accidents and anybody trying to cross the road to get from just connecting those two places. So
Yeah, and if the town requires, we can provide a traffic assessment. 15 single-family houses, to be honest, will not produce that much traffic. It'll be like probably 2 or 3 cars, trips per hour. It's really not a big traffic generator.
I understand
Yeah.
that. I think what makes that turn dangerous isn't the volume. It's just every time there's a car coming from there, it's a dangerous turn,
Yeah.
and there's really no getting around that. That's just kind of the way that the property to the left of Elm Street is situated.
Yeah.
There's like a wall there, a stone wall that kind of limit visibility. So even adding 2 or 3 per hour would still impose extra risk. So my feedback would just be, really focus on
Yeah.
that, because that could potentially be an issue.
Yeah, I think most of the traffic would probably head towards 140.
Depends on which way they're going.
Yeah.
It's north or south.
Because that would, if you wanna go to 495, you would just go right down Reservoir from that.
You think people would choose to go down Reservoir? I guess depending if they're going north or south.
Right.
Yeah,
Or north
yeah.
or south.
Or if they're getting into
They'd
Mansfield
have to,
or.
they'd have to cut through Cobb Street basically,
Right.
or go down to Elm and then cut through.
Take 123.
Well, that's to go
Or cut
straight.
over on, I can't, I think
Cross
it's going down right
Street,
now.
But if they're going, toward,
Cross Street's what I'm talking about, yeah. Yeah, so that's what they would probably,
If they're going towards Mansfield, they go that direction, where
They
that
go to
495
Mansfield.
intersection is.
yeah.
if they were going 495 north, they would wanna
Yeah.
take Reservoir down, so they would be going past Elm in that direction.
Yeah, and it
So-
would come out by the new hotel.
So the
Right,
traffic
yeah.
hitting, so the traffic hitting Elm would probably be even half.
Yep,
Yeah.
that's right, the reservoir's
Accessible.
pretty
It's
close.
not even the one hitting, it's more going past it, it's that going, because people taking a right-hand turn from that angle is what's dangerous, so it's the traffic coming from that direction. 'Cause right now, there's not a lot of traffic coming from there, and, adding any amount would add the extra risk for that right-hand turn for anybody cutting through Elm Street.
Yeah, no, I think from a traffic assessment perspective, whatever we say, if we require a traffic assessment's gonna come back and it's gonna say, will have a non-noticeable impact on the area's traffic,
Mhm.
end of report.
Yeah.
So, yeah, given the other developments, we've done traffic studies for the single-family houses,
Mhm.
it's gonna turn out similar.
Pine Street is 3 times that.
And that was, yeah, exactly, that's the, yeah. So, we've had a lot of discussions. If members of the board have additional questions, otherwise I'll open it up to members of the public if they'd like to ask any questions or make any comments to the board. Peter, if you'd like.
Yes, Peter Wiggins, 157 Mansfield Ave. I live up the street from there, and 140 is a heavily traveled road for those going to Mansfield. And during concert seasons, that road can get busy at times when there is a concert at the Xfinity Center.
Yes, it can. That's why I avoided it entirely. And I have the concert schedule bookmarked on my computer.
Yep, and as for that, I have the concert schedule all memorized so I can spend my days around it.
Well, I'm texting Peter now.
He went up to you.
Hey, Peter always went up to me. It's not a competition. Okay. Sure, Steve, and if you just, again, comments to the board.
Steve Warshall, 30 Wampum Road. I actually live right down the street from this development. I've lived in town my entire life. I believe you guys bought the property maybe 2 years ago, 3 years ago, something like that?
Yeah, it was our client, but yeah.
For the past several, I'm sorry, address you.
It's okay.
For the past, I'd say maybe 20, 30 years, I'm 35 now, I've been using, and my community has been using that section of forest. The trails that were mentioned are the trails that I used as a child. We also use it as a thoroughfare to go from 140 to Reservoir as a cut through. And as it's private land, so everybody has the right to just fence it off and say no trespassing at all. But what I'm not seeing in this development plan is any community feature. I see the coast of our reservoir blocked off for private access. Like we wouldn't have any public access to that. I don't see any idea of making a cut through over to 140 and allowing like a community to develop there. I don't see any community features. There's no public park space. There's no open space area. It's just private homes. And if we're gonna lose a massive section of forest, we should at least provide some sort of public feature to it. That would be my input. I don't know what we can actually assert, but I think that's important.
Thank you.
Sure.
And did you want to make a comment as well?
Yeah, guys.
And you're going to state your name and address for the record, please.
Shirley and Senior, 169 Reservoir Street. Just off the bat, I want to say thank you to the board members for your comments tonight. I think you've served the citizens of Norton admirably this evening, and I appreciate it, so I wanted to get that out of the way. As far as the right on Elm Street, if you are stacked on 123 heading west, before Elm Street, in front of the library, as happens most evenings for a certain period of time. You can take Elm, take the right onto Reservoir, take the, is it the left onto Reservoir, to go right onto 140, to go down Freeman Street to get further down 123. And people do it all the time, so you gotta
Don't give
think
away
about
the
things like
secrets.
that. There's also a couple of driveways
It's an
between
M shape, yeah.
Elm
Yeah.
Street and where this first outlet would be. And they're right there, so it's something to be mindful of. I've spoken to the board before on what was presented previously. I know the gentleman has said that the second half, the 140 piece, isn't being presented tonight, but this piece is very well designed to allow that cut through from here to Route 140, which I think would be a disaster. But besides that, I still think that it's 100% in a water resource district. It has a 2 feet, 2 foot of water table, and each one of these homes is gonna need its own individual pump house for the sewer to work. Ms. Parker, you said it best, just because you can do it doesn't mean you should do it or it should be allowed. It is still too densely developed for the site. It may be a typical subdivision that they're proposing, but it's an atypical site, and that has to be taken into consideration. Another comment I made before, where is the water coming from? Every summer we're told, conserve water, don't water on these days, different things depending on how severe it is, and yet here we are, looking at building houses that are, I don't even think there are this many houses this size on all of Reservoir Street. I have one of the larger ones, and I'm at a little over 1,200 square feet. These are big, big homes. So I appreciate the comment about the tie-in, because you are absolutely correct. Very few of those homes are 3 or 4 bedroom homes, and yet they're gonna have to pay as if they were. It's not appropriate. It's just not good. And then the other thing, it seems kind of silly to make them put in a sidewalk on a road that will, in all likelihood, never have sidewalks. Reservoir Street is very unlikely to have had sidewalks. It's vertically and horizontally curved, and too many people still own to the middle of the road. And they want to be paid for that. They don't want to donate it. You're also saying, the gentleman is also saying they're not looking for a variance, but at 24 feet of variance will be required, so thank you for putting that one on the record. It's too much for where it is, and I definitely don't think we should support giving them the opportunity to put in a cut through to Route 140.
To your point, it's not what's in front of us today.
I understand.
But they didn't come to us and say, this is what we're proposing. Nope, we're not doing anything with this. They've been very open, saying it's a phase 1, and they're putting in a spur, and they're looking to do something out there, but they haven't proposed it. So.
It's cumulative effect too.
Yes, it is.
So thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. Is there anyone on the Zoom meeting attending virtually who'd like to make a comment? I see at least one person here who's not a member of the board. So I'll ramble for a couple of seconds here, see if there are any further comments. And then I'll go back to the board if there's anything else that we would like to add. If we would like to continue discussions to a future session. I'm not sure if there's anything that we would want to see from the applicant for the preliminary subdivision stage at this point, or whether we'd like to close the public hearing and move forward.
May I make one other comment? I'm sorry, I meant to add this next time. The gentleman mentioned that it may be that the pump house that's on Reservoir Street, and I believe the one that he's referring to is the one up by Alder Road, would have to be enlarged. Can you get clarification on that? And
It would be the Rumford River Pump House.
That's next to my house.
And it would be the water and sewer said that their wet well can handle this development. It's when you go, what we were proposing before, the wet well would have to be upsized.
Okay.
Not the pump itself, just the wet well.
All right, so I just wanted to mention it. We have had pretty good water as of late, but it doesn't mean we still don't get
You said it.
instances of brown water.
You said something.
And it's happened just this month, we've gone through it. Just,
I would like to say the pump house isn't your drinking water, it's your sewer. It's all the sewer goes to a pump house and it pumps to Mansfield. It has nothing to do with the drinking water.
okay.
Anything in water, anything with water and Norrington
Yeah,
starts,
I grew up
fun
in Norton,
conversation.
so I know the water issue.
But if there were an issue, wouldn't it affect everyone who is hooked up to the sewer on the street? Would it slow that up for everybody?
The other end, they don't touch.
Yes, okay, thank you very much.
Yes, thank you. Okay. So, the board has a few avenues here if we have further comments. Again, this is preliminary subdivision, it's our opportunity to make those comments, provide feedback. If we would like to ask the applicant to make any revisions for us to see prior to taking action, we can ask that. Again, it's a preliminary. If we would like to close the public hearing and take action on the preliminary, we can do that as well. Obviously, we took down a whole bunch of different things, which would be incorporated into any proposal for the definitive, some of which was research, some of which would be design reviews or adjustments. I know the preliminaries are in a weird gray area of,
A motion to close the public hearing?
Seconded.
okay? We have a motion and a second to close the public hearing. Anybody like to make any comments on the motion to close the public hearing? At this point, I'll ask the applicant if they're comfortable with that as well.
I think we've heard a lot of constructive comments tonight. If there's opportunity for during the deliberation for additional specific comments, we'd like to hear that. Understand that the board's purview to close the hearing may be appropriate.
So you have no objection to us closing the public hearing at this time?
No objection to closing it. Would encourage the board to delineate as many comments as you could specifically so that we have a good, not necessarily a roadmap, but we know
Understood.
what we need to address and how we would try to get there.
Okay. Any additional comments from the board members in terms of closing the public hearing? Okay, we have a motion and a second on the floor. All in favor of closing the public hearing on the preliminary subdivision for Reservoir Estates or Reservoir Reservoir Street, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Abstentions? Okay, so the public hearing is now closed. In terms of things that we would like to see addressed and potentially included in any decision, I know we've talked about sewer tie-ins. I know we've talked about the subdivision design standards in terms of grade, in terms of fill and other disturbance in the flood areas. And this is entirely in the Water Resource Protection District. Is there anything else, as the applicant stated, in terms of clear delineations, things that we would like to, that we want to give them as specific comments and or, pardon the harshness of the term, but marching orders?
I can't think of it.
Sir,
I mean, you covered the big main.
This is, I'm not gonna recognize you at this time,
Oh,
because it's
sorry.
public hearing. It's okay, and we'll hold it against you. Are there other things that we want the applicant to evaluate at this time that we haven't already discussed? Again, we wanna, I'm a list person, so.
My comments wouldn't change whether it's this preliminary plan or a definitive plan. It's gonna be the same.
We've talked about concerns about pumping. Anything further?
I would agree with that in my comments with regards to the percentage slope of these properties is concerning, specifically the ones closest to the reservoir.
Okay. I know the applicant needs to make decisions about the roadway width and whether they ask for a waiver for that or not, and that'll determine whether it's something that is a private way, whether they do look to be accepted by the town. As well as, yeah.
I do like Mr. Warshall's comment with regards to if we were to move forward, we would like to see something available for the community.
That is,
I would specifically. I know on the prior version, there was a boat ramp proposed.
right now, I don't think any of these properties would have, none of the properties on this lot would have pavement at the waterway.
Yep.
So that's not even if we imagine that there was something on the lot, it's not something we can evaluate as part of this plan.
Right. But it had been considered at one point.
But between the four corners of the page, there is nothing.
Yes, correct.
If the applicant chooses to add something, that's something that we could evaluate, yes. Is there anything else that we wanted to discuss, provide as feedback prior to taking action on the preliminary that we have in front of us?
Motion to approve preliminary site plan 18797.
Preliminary subdivision.
Sorry, yes.
Everything starts with an S.
Yeah.
SP. Okay, so the motion is in the affirmative to approve. Again, as a preliminary, this is not necessarily binding to the specific plans. We've provided the applicant feedback. So we have a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay. We have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion on the motion to approve the preliminary subdivision plan, 18797? Okay. With no further discussion, I will go to the vote. All in favor of the approval, please say aye. All opposed?
Nay.
Nay.
Abstain? Okay. So that is the vote. We'll issue the preliminary subdivision decision for you. And I think we've had discussions about it, and we see you again in the future.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. We have already covered letter E on our agenda. So the final item on our posted agenda is a discussion of the town council request policy, which Brian and I attached to the agenda. Brian, if you're able to pull that up just to, so we have it as a discussion. This is a new policy that was approved by the select board. And I will give this the context in that I asked, this was a specific discussion point. This is not related to anything to this board. So we didn't do something wrong to cause this. So this is a process to lay out communication with town council. So the first section is the town manager. Town manager has direct access. The chair of the select board has direct access. The select board members can ask for ethics opinions and conflict of interests from town council, and they do not need to request access. Otherwise, chairs need to request access from the town council to obtain legal advice, including the request for a written opinion or for them to attend a meeting, etc. And those also require a vote from the board. So if we want to ask town council something, we'll have to take a vote and submit a form.
So how do we go about nullifying this policy or giving negative feedback?
I have already provided one piece of feedback to the town manager through Brian. It is a policy. We were not consulted on it prior, which is fun. I would have preferred a collaborative approach, but that is not the approach the select board took to take in this case. So, that is.
So give you negative feedback as you wish.
I would say that we would provide, if we have additional my feedback, which I submitted to Brian, was that there is a statement that we will submit the request to the town manager, and there was no definition of how long the town manager will take to respond to that request.
That's half the problem, how long this is gonna take to,
That
and
is.
then they have to vote?
The town manager can say, yes, this makes sense, or no, or I need to ask more questions. I asked for, let's see, the way I phrased it, I believe, was, I want a window of the town manager will respond within X. If they do not respond, then it is assumed it is approved, and we can talk to town council. So that not that I like Mike Units, but I don't request getting lost, or the so-called Abraham Lincoln's famous pocket veto, where he never actually vetoed anything, he just kept the document in his pocket and didn't take any action, and then nobody could override his vote. So, there was, it would also be nice to have a form that was like a Google form, because it's 2023, or something like that. That would be something that maybe would be a simple change, but,
Standard policy in the past, that you would just, the chairman would just go right to town council.
Yes.
or through towns,
Through town staff.
generally, I would go through town staff.
Correct. And I think, I don't know of any other town that's,
Yeah, well,
That's
and you'll
how it
also
always
note this
understood.
policy applies to town staff. So not only is it overburdening boards that need pretty near constant contact with town council, it is impacting people like Maria and like John Thomas, who literally are in daily contact with town council in the scope of doing their everyday jobs.
Which is why I wanna make sure that there's a time frame so Mike Units doesn't have 40 of these and isn't able to get them in a timely manner, and it impacts the ability of boards to take action on items.
Yes, the policy needs to be amended, I'm not looking for a window. They need to figure out a way to do a targeted drone strike to address a specific issue and not carpet bomb the entire town and making everyone in it collateral damage, just because
Tell me how you
there is
really feel, Laura.
dysfunction, yeah. Yeah.
would you have to go,
Every board I've ever sat on knows you need to go through the chair if you want to talk to town council. Every board, and I've sat on 3 of them now. There is no need to punish boards and worse departments by taxing them with ridiculous bureaucracy just because a particular board cannot seem to function properly.
Okay.
and do you have to go for permission to reply to an email to town council? Like, you know,
I would
it's kind-
assume that when
it's
you
kind of
open the
vague.
discussion on the issue, then the issue is
You
you
don't
are
have
in
it to
contact with.
assume.
The form, if the form's up on the screen there, the form is, what do you want to talk to town council about? Tell me what it's about. So I would assume that correspondence related to that matter is covered, whether it's town council saying, yes, that's fine, or whether it involves
And-
3 emails.
And
It's
so,
like planning board work in perpetuity.
I
So the
tend
town-
to be a little bit more of a, too nice for that.
so the town manager says no, then what do you do?
I'll do it.
Then,
You just go to them anyway.
well, no, then we would say, then I would say,
You could go to town
then I
council
would,
anyway.
then I would come, so the process would be, if the board feels that we would like an opinion from town council, and we've reviewed the bylaws, and we're still not sure, and we submit a request, and the town manager says no, then I would come back to the board and say, the town manager has refused our request to connect with town council on this matter. We will make the decision as best we can without that opinion. And that's it. And if we feel that we cannot approve something without town council's opinion, then we cannot approve something without town council's opinion. And that is also why the window is important, because we need to know, okay, we need to know at our next meeting, we need to know in 4 weeks, or something like that. I wanna know, how long are you gonna take to do it? Because I'm assuming that, because I generally assume if we have anything we need to ask Amy, if it's any quicker turnaround than a week, we're in trouble.
Correct.
So I'm assuming that so essentially,
You need lead time.
right, exactly.
It's an
If we come out of a
impediment to
meeting
getting
and need
business
to
done
get
in
town,
normal course.
if we come out of a meeting and need town council's opinion, we need Mike to have a turnaround of
Tomorrow.
max 48 hours. That's generous. Because then we need to give Amy a week to get her opinion, for us to get it before Monday afternoon before our next meeting. And that's the worst case scenario here. So the 4 boards that require town council advice on things, it is a challenge. It is a new policy. It is a policy that is in effect. It's not a policy where it's in effect in June. So right now, this is the rule. We all hate it. Hate may be too strong a word, maybe not. I'm not
Do you
sure.
know the request has to be copied to the select board?
That's fine. I don't
For
care.
what purpose?
Maybe they want to feel important. I don't care. Sorry, select board, when you watch this meeting. I'm sarcastic and you know it. Maybe they are interested to know. It was probably just part of the process, and they didn't think that. I don't view it as Big Brother. I view it as the select board feeling like they want to be informed about what we're going to town council about. Personally, I try to get fewer emails rather than more. It's not my inbox. They're not the ones that's responding to the request, the town manager is responding to the request. The select board does not have authority to say, no, you can't, by this policy. It's the town manager's decision.
Well, I should also point out that the select board has no authority, excuse me, over town departments. So requiring a town department to copy them is outside of their purview.
That would be something for Mike to evaluate.
He's not a lawyer.
I'm not a lawyer, but
Yes.
I would
No,
call.
directed at you.
Or an engineer.
This is more of a helpful hint for department staff who may want to raise their own concerns.
To their supervisor
Yes.
and other people in their organizational chain to discuss, yes. If that is a point of frustration that they should escalate internally due to jurisdiction, yes. Thank you for pointing that out.
Sure.
So, does anybody have any additional specific comments that they would like to send to the town manager and select board through town staff? Or would you like to send it directly on individually when you have had more time to think? While all requests for legal advice must go to the town chair, all comments on the legal request form do not go to the town chair. Yes, Maria, sorry.
I'm sorry. So the way that I've been doing since I came, Michael said he would like to be notified. He wants to grant permission for us to go to town council. So I just go down to his office, ask him verbally, get confirmation. It's a lot easier for me to do it being in the building. I understand how it's very restrictive for boards who can't just pop in every 10 minutes and see if he's available.
And some don't have staff.
Yeah, and some don't have staff. I also would like maybe clarification on whether this was an attempt to control the legal budget, or if it was just an attempt to be informed. If there was information, then we could fill a form, but it wouldn't need to be approved. It is just so they can collect data on how many times. It's just for budget tracking purposes, but not budget control, if that makes sense. So if it's informational, we can figure out a different way of doing it. But if it's budget control, I also know that why would they deny a request that would just cause liability to the town and possibly even larger costs for litigation? So I don't think we will be denied, so why go through an approval process?
My unofficial evaluation, or unofficial, I'll just say scuttlebutt, was that it is not related to budget and it is related to information.
Okay, then I think we can approach it a different way, you can bring that up to their attention.
Yeah.
Yes,
It's in
that would,
response to a specific event.
but yes, so. So are there any specific comments that we would like to share related to this policy at this time, for it to be submitted through Maria or Brian? Otherwise, if you have additional comments, I would say you can submit them directly to the town manager and the select board, specifically the select board, as they are the ones who approve this policy. So, anything further, or would we like, otherwise, I'll see if there's, is there anything else that anybody would like to add while we are in our open session here?
I had asked Brian earlier, Maria might know more, anything about Reed and Barton that's been happening?
No, I checked with Michael 2 days ago, he hasn't heard anything from the lawyers from a couple months. I think they're still trying to acquire ownership of the site, without acquiring liability. So that's where they're trying to separate in court. So our lawyer's talking to their lawyers, and there's a discussion on who is going, I think the developer would rather us own, I think, Zero Cross Street, but that has the worst of the contamination, so the town would rather really not have it. And the town didn't indicate they were open to that option. But it's all still in discussion with,
We're still years away, gotcha.
the developer indicated that she wants to break ground next year. But I also understand that courts take time, lawyers do as well, and there's a lot of
purpose.
mitigation. So,
Lawyers do charge by billable hours, yes.
yes. But I've been in talks with the developer, I connected her to Wheaton College, because Wheaton has indicated interest in maker space or flex space for their students. They have a social entrepreneurship program that is quite successful, and they need additional space. Reed and Barton could be a site that you could have student housing up top and maker space at the bottom for students. I believe she was excited about it, so it's still moving forward.
It hasn't hit a
rate-
roadblock, I
Yeah.
guess is the only answer I was looking for.
Yeah.
It's still kind of moving.
There's speed bumps, but no roadblocks.
No blocks.
Yes, that's what it is,
Okay,
Thank you.
of course.
Thanks.
okay. Anything further that we'd like to add in our open session this evening?
Motion to adjourn?
Nope. Oh, yeah. Seconded. Sorry, I thought we weren't done. Seconded.
We can keep going.
Nah.
Okay. We have
think
a
I've
motion
complained
and a
enough.
second to adjourn. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Abstentions? Okay. Thank you very much, everybody. Have a good night. Just a